Thank you so much, Clarissa. And once again, thank you to all of you who've chosen to join us yet again for another episode of Rise Up, Shape Up. So, for this particular session, I was invited to lead you through a guided loving kindness practice. So, in the mindfulness meditation tradition of which I'm a part, there's a category of practices that are known as cultivation practices. And just as the name implies, they're about cultivating or developing particular attitudes, particular qualities, particular traits, which if we get to express these qualities and these traits much more fully in life, can give us a much richer, more easeful, more gracious, and more joyous experience of life. And so just one thing that I want to highlight as a basic assumption of these practices. They're based on the premise that we can cultivate particular attitudes in the same way that we can develop particular skills. And I really want to spend a bit of time talking about that because many of us implicitly assume that people are born with certain qualities. So we assume that some people are kinder than others. We assume that some people are more grateful than others. We assume that some people are more forgiving than others. And so for many of us, these are qualities that are innate. If we don't have it, then we don't have it. Okay? Now, there's certainly a bit of truth to that idea. We're all born with unique temperaments, and some temperaments uh, make it easier for people to access these qualities with much more ease than others. Okay? But the point is, under this tradition, the idea is that if we if we invest enough effort, if we undertake these techniques, so to speak, we can learn to access and we can learn to embody and we can learn to express these qualities with greater ease and with greater facility over time. So even if you're someone who doesn't think of themselves as naturally kind, the idea is if you undertake loving kindness practices on a regular basis, you will find that over time it's easier to be kind. Okay. The other thing I'd like to point out about loving kindness practices and cultivation practices in general is that they really are practices in the most ordinary sense of the word. So when I say practice, I mean doing something repeatedly, even if you don't feel like it, even if you don't think you're producing results, even if you think that nothing's happening. And in the world of sports, we take that for granted. Athletes know that they have to practice, even if they don't feel like it, even if they'd rather just stay in bed. Because the understanding is, if I put in the time, if I put enough effort, if I repeat this behavior, if I do the drills, then it just comes with much more facility to me when I actually need to draw upon these skills. Okay, so the practice that I'm going to be leading you through in a few moments is a loving kindness practice. There are many cultivation practices, but for this one, we're focusing on loving kindness. And there are many ways to do a loving kindness practice. There are traditional ways of doing it, and there are contemporary ways of doing it. So the one that I'm leading you into is a contemporary variation. If we had a bit more time, I'd probably take you through more stages, but since our time together isn't very long, I'm just going to focus on 2 stages. But I will give you a few tips afterwards on how you can get creative, how you can tailor this to your own needs. Okay, so without further ado, let's just set our posture into the correct one or the conducive one for this technique. So whether you're sitting on a chair or you're sitting on the floor, just find a way of carrying yourself that allows you to embody the qualities of dignity and ease. So just allowing your spine to be long, and then just sensing if there are any obvious places of tension or resistance that you can soften and release. Just allowing the shoulders to relax downwards, away from the ears. Letting the face be soft. And casting the gaze downwards. Or if you'd like, just closing your eyes altogether. And let's just transition into the practice by being mindful of the breath for 3 rounds. So just breathing in and being aware of the fact that you're breathing in. Breathing out, just being aware that you're breathing out. And just doing that for 2 more cycles of the breath. Inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, and exhaling. And now for the first part of this loving kindness practice, just bring to mind someone that you love, someone for whom the affection is uncomplicated. It can be a partner, it can be a parent, it can be a child, it can even be a pet. But just bring to mind a being that you love. And as you bring them to mind, just notice how it feels in your body to presence your beloved in your mind. And as you bring this beloved being to mind, begin to think about all the things about them that you love, that you appreciate, that you cherish about them so much. Just taking a few moments to deeply sense the goodness in this being that you love. You can even bring up a favorite memory if that helps. And as you bring their beloved qualities to mind, notice what shifts in your experience. What happens in your body? How does it feel in your stomach? How does it feel in your chest? How does it feel in your throat? And you take some time to sense the goodness in this being that you love. And now imagine that they're right in front of you. And imagine yourself fully expressing to them what it is about them that you appreciate so much. And if it's a pet, just imagine that they can understand your words. Just conveying, just articulating, just expressing as freely as you can what it is about this being that you love, that you appreciate so much. And just sharing it without holding back. Telling them what it is about them that you love. And as you do this, just notice what shifts in your internal experience. How does it feel when you can sense the goodness in the other and express it to them as a gesture of kindness, as a gesture of generosity? And perhaps imagine that they can hear exactly what you're saying. And notice once again how it feels for you when somebody can be the recipient of your kindness. And just taking a few more moments to sense that. And now gently let that go. And we'll move on to the second part of this meditation. Now bring to mind someone that you don't know very well. Someone who's just an acquaintance. Somebody that you see on a regular basis, but maybe you don't even know their name. Maybe it's the doorman of your building, the security guard at your office, or maybe the cashier in your favorite grocery store. And just taking a few moments to reflect on their goodness, even if you don't know them that well. Just being present to the many ways that they might have been of service. Maybe they gave you a smile. Maybe they did their work cheerfully. Just taking a few moments to sense, to be present to the goodness in another being. One who's not so close to you, maybe, but who has the same concerns as you, the same difficulties, maybe the same struggles. And notice once again what changes in your internal experience when you can sense the goodness in another being, even if they're a stranger. Now imagine that you could approach them. Imagine expressing to them, sharing with them what goodness about them that you felt, that you perceived, and just thanking them for it. Just expressing your appreciation without holding back, without embarrassment or fear. Just touching base with your own spontaneous, warm-hearted benevolence. And notice what shifts in your inner world when you can express that kindness to another being. When you can sense the goodness in a stranger and express it back to them. Perhaps you can even imagine the looks on their face when they hear what you have to say. And just taking a few more moments to immerse yourself in this felt sense of kindness. And then slowly just letting that go. And just noticing any observations or insights that might have come up for you during this practice. It takes so little for us to be kind, but it does so much for another. And slowly just taking your time. If you happen to have closed your eyes, you can gently open them now. So I did promise to say a few things just to give you a few pointers. So you can be tremendously creative with a loving kindness practice. If you struggle with being kind to yourself, you can actually include yourself in that meditation by taking a few moments just to sense your own goodness, just taking a few moments to sense what it is about you that you can appreciate, where you've worked hard, where you've succeeded, and you know, imagining expressing your appreciation towards yourself as if you were a different person. So you can easily incorporate that into a loving kindness practice like this. Um, a more challenging variation of loving kindness is when you include in the practice people who may have hurt you in the past, people who may have done you a bit of injury or harm. And to be completely honest, in the traditional practices, that's really how it goes. You do include the category of the enemy. It's the final stage because it's a little challenging to do. Um, but that's why it's a practice. Okay, it's just like lifting weights. You start with the smaller barbells, and as that gets easier, you start lifting heavier barbells. So in the traditional loving kindness practices, we start with easy barbells. We start with the people we love. We start with ourselves. Then we graduate to medium barbells, strangers, neutral people, and then we save the heaviest barbells for last. So it is a practice. You don't always feel warm and fluffy and loving when you do it. That's not the point. The point is to put in the time and the effort so that over time you'll notice that it's just much easier to express your kindness and your benevolence to other beings. Okay, so I hope you found it helpful and valuable. And I'm going to turn you back to Clarissa.